Thank you, Larry, the Liberty Guy. Welcome to In the Dugout. I'm Mike Stenhouse, your host, and for those of you who may be watching our show for the first time, In the Dugout is a casual interview format where we bring in, simulating my days back as a pro ball player when I used to sit around the dugout with my friends and teammates, and we just talk about life. So today we're going to talk about a very important topic in the dugout style with our guest we'll introduce in a second. This particular episode is geared to address really what everyone recognizes the biggest question of our time, especially for minority populations. Is there systematic police brutality against black populations? Are the police bullies? And is institutional racism a real problem in America? My organization, the Rhode Island Center for Freedom and Prosperity, since its inception, has advocated for policies that would directly benefit low-income and minority communities. We helped advance criminal justice reform policies in Rhode Island. We advocated for major cuts to our state sales tax, a tax that disproportionately takes money out of the pockets of low-income families. We pushed for increases to the earned income tax credit, which would put more money in the pockets of low-income workers, those who are working. And most importantly, we have strongly advocated for educational freedom for minority and all families so that parents can be empowered to choose the best school for their children. And today, as I mentioned, we're going to discuss the issue of policing and the Black Lives Matter movement. Our guest is a nationally acclaimed, award-winning movie producer. He's a former cable news contributor and just learned a former track athlete. Let's welcome Kevin Jackson to In the Dugout. Kevin, welcome to our show.
Thank you very much. I'm going to start my video here.
All right. And you're coming to us from beautiful Phoenix, Arizona area.
That's right. Nice and cool here, about 110 today.
Well, you know, our tradition, so we're in the dugout, so we got to wear a baseball cap. So I'm going to wear, for any of your fans who might be watching, my University of Rhode Island hat, so they know you're talking to a Rhode Island guy. You probably don't talk to too many Rhode Island guys. What do you got for us today, Kevin?
So I got my, I went to a private military school, the Marine Military Academy. My son was down there for summer camp, and I'm not much of a sports fan anymore just because I think they're a bunch of high-paid sissies, but I will put on my Marine Military Academy camo hat to do the interview.
Now, clearly you weren't referring to me with that remark, because if anything, I was not high-paid. I might have been a low-paid sissy, but I was never a high-paid sissy.
You're old school, you know, back in the day when these guys were, you know, we stayed with the same teams and all that, but now it's become kind of a joke.
Bleeding Blue is the movie.
Yeah.
You market it as the movie Hollywood and the left don't want you to see.
Yeah.
Why did you make this movie, Kevin, and what was your goal?
So we made it because one of my benefactors said, Kevin, will you do something to help the Black community and bridge the gap between policing and the Black community? And I said, yeah. He asked me to write a book. And I said, how about I just do a movie? And he goes, you ever done a movie? And I go, no, that's what'll make it fun. And so he was thinking it was going to be some kind of YouTube, you know, this 8th grade production thing. And it actually is a spectacular film. And I will tell anybody that goes to bleedingbluemovie.com and wants to see the film, if you watch this film and you don't enjoy it, we'll give you your money back. It's absolutely spectacular. I've probably seen this film no less than 20, now more than that. I've seen it probably 40 times. And every time I see it, I see something else in it that I missed. It's a spectacular film. And the idea was show policing the way it really is. We don't over-glamorize police, but we do show that they're humans first. I get asked all the time, I'm a martial artist, and they said, Kevin, you know, police have all these rules. And I said, let me tell you, I'm a human being first. If you're trying to get my weapon in any way, shape, or form, I don't care what the rules are for chokeholds. I'm going to choke you out. So, we you know, these are people who want to get home to their kids and their families just like everybody else.
Why do you say this is the movie that the media won't show you?
Well, so we had Hollywood fight us at every turn. They when we released it at the end of September, they locked up all the theaters. The pricing for theaters for Michael Moore's films are pennies on the dollar compared to trying to get an independent film in. It cost me $5,000 per theater to what they call four-wall it. it only costs more, under $1,000. They don't want to credit you for, we sold out almost every location. They don't want to credit you for that, because once the hoopla gets out that it's a good film and it's selling out, then you hit the trades and suddenly everybody wants to see it. So they didn't want to do that. The other thing that they didn't do is some theater owners said, we don't want to play your movie. I go, why? Well, we don't like the content. It was too pro-cop, too anti-Obama, which it's pro-cop, but it's pro-truth. And it was anti-Obama because it was pro-truth. We believe Obama put a target on the back of police.
We're going to get into that a little bit later, yes. So before we get too much into the movie, which, by the way, it really is. The amount of interviews conducted, the amount of perspectives you bring to this, and you don't gloss over difficult questions. We'll get into that soon. You paint a picture, of the human side of police, the dangers they live with day to day, the emotions they have going through the things they go through, split decisions they have to make, and then, of course, you address the larger Black Lives Matter issue. So the key question as I pose it, and before we get into, let me just get your opinion so I get a better sense as to where you're coming from.
Mm-hmm.
Key question, is there institutional racism, and is there structural police brutality and racism there as well? And, I find that hard to believe. My uncle was a police officer. My other uncle was a firefighter. And I don't know, that's a small sample, of course, but to me, and can't remember if you bring this up in the movie or not, but to me, the only institutional racism that exists in our country is a lack of good education for low-income minority families, and the fact that there's no choice for them. But you comment on all that before we get into your movie. What is your view on all this?
So the movie notwithstanding, is there institutional racism? The short answer is yes. The institutional racism is the lack of two-parent homes. And how did we institutionalize that in the Black community? If you look at the institutional racism of the academic system, the idea that the worst schools are in minority neighborhoods, particularly Black neighborhoods, it's institutionalized. If you look at going into higher ed, the fact that 60% of Black kids don't graduate within 6 years and entering college, but they will lower your grades to let you get into the better schools, knowing that you got a 60% chance of flunking out. Here's another institutional racism. Blacks carry the most student debt, whether they graduate or not after leaving college, whether they get through it or they fail. That's institutional racism. The institutional racism of the criminal justice system, where is it based? It's based in big cities. Give me your state, give me your big city. I will give you your Democrat and your institutional racism in criminal justice, in education, in work, jobs, all of it. In crime. Why is there more criminality in the Black community? And where's that criminality focused? In big cities, in the areas that have names to them, Compton, 8 Mile, etc., heavily minority. So yes, but is there institutional racism in America? No. If you're a Black person and you want to get out of that and you decide, I'm not going to live in one of these Democrat hellholes, and I'm going to go live where I can be free and do what I need to do to make my life better, you got all the opportunity in the world.
What you say there is really been the thought I've had. Society makes a white guy like me afraid to express an opinion about issues where I could never have walked in your shoes or somebody else's shoes. But yet I have my opinions, right? And yet I'm told I shouldn't express them. So I'm going to express it here. I've always wondered exactly that. Listen, whatever racism there is, and I'm not denying it exists, and just because there is some racism doesn't mean the whole country is racist, but the question is, and I won't make it an opinion, I'll ask a question, is racism there to such a degree that Blacks can't succeed?
Yeah, racism, it's such a catchphrase for everybody, and you white people crack me up with racism. Y'all crack me up because y'all are so quick to just capitulate. Like you go, Kevin, I admit there's some racism. That's like saying there's some bad air to breathe somewhere in the country, or there's some bad water to drink. For the most part, anywhere you go to drink water in this country, it's going to be drinkable. If you go use the bathroom somewhere, it's going to flush. You know, occasionally a toilet doesn't flush, but they're going to flush. If you go get a meal, it's probably you're going to survive a meal, but you could get a bad meal that could kill you, but it's not likely. So this idea, you know, the minute that we capitulate and we go, yeah, so we can all admit there's a little racism. Well, yeah, okay, great. So now what are we? Are we all racist? Overwhelmingly, we are so not racist. The idea of even, I don't even acknowledge it. When I'm arguing with on TV with people, and they say, Richard Fowler tried to get me into that little trap. Well, surely, Kevin, you can admit that there's some racism in this country. And I was like, yeah, I can admit that there are millions and millions more non-racist people than there are racist people. So don't try to make the minority the majority. I think it's so sickening, and it's off-putting because it diminishes the accomplishments of Blacks.
Yes.
It makes people like you know, all get lumped into some bucket because some knuckle-dragging Neanderthal thinks badly about Black people. Let me tell you, I've met a few of these knuckle-draggers. None of them impacted me whatsoever in my life. What I learned very early in life is that if I'm going to accomplish something, I'm going to do it. And here's what's really interesting to me from a race perspective. If you tell me, Kevin, I'll give you an example. When I went to high school, they said, Kevin, a Black person has never won the highest award in our school. I was up for it. And they said, and what was even worse, they said, we won it last year. No school's ever won it 2 years in a row. And I go, wow, so we'll get that distinction in two things. And guess what? We did. My school is the only school that won the Minnie Stevens Piper Scholarship 2 years in a row. And I'm the first Black guy from my school to win it.
What state was that, Kevin?
Texas.
Texas, okay.
Big school. All the valedictorians, all big state. I meant big state. All the valedictorians are picked of the schools are picked for this award. And our valedictorian a year before, a guy named Mike Gross, won the award. And my counselor said, they've never given this award twice to the same school. Well, guess what? In the history of our school, the minute he told me that, I go, then we'll go win it. How about that? And we did. So in the old days, you tell somebody what they can't do, and they said, I'll show you. Now they call their lawyer and Jesse Jackson in the NAACP and maybe Barack Obama or somebody, and they try to get you sanctioned so you can be, you know, waterboarded. Who knows? But back in the day, we didn't care.
I gotta love you, man. So you're taking the spirit, right? This is how we talk to each other in the dugout, man. You white guys crack me up, you Black guys. You know, that's how we used to talk. And we could do it back then, you know, Kevin. Now, you can't say anything. I mean, if I can tell you how unpressured, you know, there was no tension. We joked with each other. We called each other names, and it seems like society has forced this on us, that something that didn't exist. Because I can tell you, it didn't exist on the teams I played with in the 80s.
I was going to say, you know, you and I have the distinction of being athletes. And we've been in a lot of locker rooms. And I'm going to tell you, if you're playing baseball, I was a martial artist and a track guy, but when we needed points for the track team, we didn't care who got them. We didn't care if it was Jimmy Horiadis, who was our decathlete.
Brothers on the team, baby, either way.
Right. And so, you know, you want the best guy on the field. You want the best pitcher in the game. You want the best batters at the plate because you want to win. And it had nothing to do with color. And it was a meritocracy. And that's the way the reason why America was the greatest country in the world is we are a meritocracy. The cream rises to the top. What the left wants to do, and I don't want to make this political because I know most of your think tanks are not along these lines, but what America now wants to do is they want to infantilize us to where, again, everybody gets the trophy, not to get cliche, but we've made ourselves go from being a meritocracy and looking for the best, the cream of the crop, to saying, well, you know, if we can't get that, we'll all get diversity, equity, and inclusion. To heck with you. If I got to play with a team of white guys to beat you, so be it. If I got to play with a team of lesbians to beat you, I'll do it.
All right. We're here to talk about your movie and promote your movie. So let's do that. I'm going to start by just playing a short, maybe 30, 40-second clip from your preview. So here's Bleeding Blue by Kevin Jackson.
Every day in America, millions of people will rise with the morning sun and prepare themselves for the workday ahead. In their daily routine, most people will never fear for their lives. For roughly 900,000 of those Americans, however, the possibility of losing their lives before the end of their shift is part of the job description. Although police officers are a constant and visible presence in society, outside of a routine traffic stop, most citizens will never interact with a law enforcement officer. This leaves many people to view law enforcement as just another stranger in the crowd. So, who is the person behind the badge?
And Kevin, I think that's what your movie does so well. You show that person behind the badge. So
Yeah.
talk about why you took that angle and why people need to watch to see more.
Very simple reason. Who wants to run towards gunfire? I mean, you tell me. You know, there's a scene in the movie, I'm not giving much away, but one of the cops, he's from New York, he's a cool cat, runs a boxing gym, and he goes, hey, if the stuff breaks out, who are you going to call? Are you going to call Colin Kaepernick? And he's so right. You know, we've got these people that are fearless, and they're willing to put on a uniform, and they're willing to go out and protect strangers. And we have a group of people that say, no, I don't want to protect you. And oh, by the way, can I grab your guns while I'm at it? It's a sick point in society where they don't want you to practice your rights, the right that is part of your DNA, which is to protect yourself. It's funny. I tell my son this because I train him to fight, and I say, I tell him to get into the mindset of you're going to get killed. The minute that we stand across from each other, understand I'm going to kill you. And if you take that mentality into the fight, you understand why you fight. That's why I don't fight. I tell people all the time, I'm a dangerous person, but I'm not going to fight because the mentality I take into the fight is you're about to die, because I have to believe you are thinking the same thing about me. So we are in an ideological battle right now that is equivalent to that. Think about it where we are right now, and I'm going to get off of the movie for just a second. We have a man who, in my opinion, undoubtedly suffers from dementia. He's unqualified to be president. And we have a group of people, millions of Americans, who want him out. You have a competent person, think what you want about Donald Trump. You have a very competent person who's demonstrated his competence, and they want him out, all for philosophical, ideological reasons. That's insane. If Barack Obama were performing like Donald Trump, I'd be for him. I'm not for people that want to defund police when Black people call the police 7 times more than whites. We are 13% of the population, and we call the police 7 times more than the average white person. Our neighborhoods are so crime-ridden, it's ridiculous. Almost 50% of the violent crime in America is committed against or committed by young Black men between a certain age group. And worse than this, 7,000 people a year, give or take, die at the hands, Black folks die at the hands of other Blacks. And we want to make the police our problem when less than 5 questionable deaths, 10 if it's a banner year, are dying at the hands of police. It is insidious and it's insane.
We're going to talk about that in the media in a bit. So I want to share one of the, it's not your photo, but you used it in the movie. So, and what I liked about your movie is you didn't gloss over some of the rough spots in policing historically, right? So you start with, and we all have this image back from Norman Rockwell, right, in the 50s about community policing, and you talk about how the policeman was always seen as the friendly guy walking the beat, right? That kind of thing, chasing down the bad guys. And it was very simple. It's very simple. But then, then you saw how during the Jim Crow era, we saw a very real and different side of police, with the dogs attacking peaceful protesters fighting for their civil rights. Right. What's the real truth about policing?
So that's where you get into this real dichotomy in the Black community around policing, because so many Blacks live on the muscle memory of the 1960s, and we're just, these images are emblazoned. Even if you didn't go through it, I never had a water cannon turned on me or a German Shepherd sicked on me by a police officer. I've had nothing but amazing interactions with police. but I know my grandparents' stories who raised me. I know their stories. I know that it was legitimately happening. And we had a legitimate beef. We had, these Democrat-controlled cities, again, making it political, but it's true. The Bull Connors of the world. These were people that did not want civil rights for blacks. So we had a legitimate—
A lot of them were KKK, right?
Yeah. So we had a legitimate grievance against the system and the police, who were the enforcers of these draconian rules for blacks. But you fast forward ahead to today, show me a water cannon that's been turned on blacks, the innocent blacks. I'm not talking about people in Ferguson that are creating havoc.
Yep.
Show me German shepherds sicked on blacks. There's no reason in this country today, as a black man, that you can't go and achieve whatever you want to achieve. And we've proven it. And this country took, in 1776 in its founding, I believe in the shortest amount of time in history, made presidents out of slaves. I don't think there's any other culture that can say that. There are more people to point at as success stories. In fact, white folks, you guys pointed more. If I say, so give me some examples of successful people in America, you're not thinking, let me see, Pat Boone. You think LeBron James, you think Oprah Winfrey, you think Tiger Woods, you think Denzel Washington. You don't even think ethnocentrically white about it. You think about the megastars that are black. And don't even get people started by black stars, because then they'll go, well, there's Beyonce and Jay-Z. If you go category by category, iconic black figures who've made it. So what are they? Are they outliers? Are there not enough black success? Is there not enough black success in this country for people to believe it? It's ridiculous. So, and then we get into the idea that cops are hunting blacks. Well, they are terrible hunters, because if there's 900,000 of them, and I know what the black population is, why haven't they killed us all?
All right, but let's admit this though. So back, with that picture of those German shepherds, there was reason back then, right? The black community.
There was legitimate reason,
right? That they were apprehensive, and I guess that's what. Again, this is where I need you to tell me. I've always wondered about this. Is that the kind of thing that led to the talk? Tell us what the talk is.
The talk is nonsense. So we talk about the talk. And in the black community, many of the leftist blacks will say, when you're black growing up, you have to tell your kids how to behave with the police. Let me tell you, if you're white and you don't have that same talk with your kids, you run the same risk. And by the way, more whites are killed by cops per year than blacks, not per capita, but certainly based on encounter, whites are killed in far less numbers than blacks, based on the number of high-risk incidents and encounters with police officers. So the lie is that blacks are the only ones being killed. Whites are killed per capita much more. And let me put it a different way. You're much more likely to be killed as a white person in a cop encounter than a black person. But whether you're black, white, Korean, or whatever, if you don't tell your kids when a cop comes up to you and in a suspicious situation, put your hands on the steering wheel, no quick movements, a host of other things. That's the talk. I don't care what color my kids are. I'm going to tell them that. Law enforcement knows to do that themselves. You talk to the chief of police of any day. If he's in a car in a suit traveling to another jurisdiction and he gets pulled over, hands on the steering wheel, fingers open. Yeah. He's making
And that's the point I want to kind of make. To me, again, I've talked to my uncle about this, former police officer in our city of Cranston here. Is it so much black or white, or is it whether or not you're resisting arrest? If you resist arrest, black, white, brown, purple, you could be in big trouble.
I mean, think about, okay, I'm a civilian and I walk up to you and I don't do anything to you, but I just show you that I have a weapon. As a civilian, what are your thoughts? I'm just saying, you're at the grocery store, at a Walmart, and I walk through and you can see a weapon holstered or whatever. People don't have to tell me. See, I have this superpower called common sense, Mike. And I will tell you, you have a reaction that says, wow, the guy's got a weapon. Now, you're not thinking, depending on the circumstance, you might wonder, is he going to use it or whatever, but you'll have a response. With a police officer, people see that. And now in the black community, they don't see the weapon. They see it as, I know he can't use it under certain circumstances and all that, but you don't think that with a civilian. If you were to come up on me and I got a weapon, there's no rules that apply to me. So you have an automatic reaction. That reaction is gone with cops because of the way that we now treat them. So, you know, we put them in a special category because they've got oversight. They have a certain kind of rules that have to be followed and all that. And we let people that walk, let me tell you, the average black kid walking through the hood, you got an 80% chance that kid is strapped. For you white folks, that means he's carrying a weapon. So you better know that he's doing it for his own self-defense, just so we're clear. He's not doing it because he wants to be in trouble. There is no DNA of blacks that make us more likely to commit crimes. And this is where we get into these crazy arguments about, oh, you're trying to say black people do more crimes. No, I'm telling you, black people are put in situations that create increase the propensity of them doing crime. So that's the key. And when we get over that, and we say it's not in your DNA, but it is in your circumstances. And you know what you got to quit doing? You got to stop resisting arrest. You got to stop talking smack to police officers, because look at most.
To me, that's the thing. Whoever does, to me, that's the thing. But no one talks about resisting arrest.
Yeah, I do all the time.
You get encountered and you shoot someone. Well, there's something that happens in the middle, isn't there? Anyway, okay. We're talking about the movie Bleeding Blue. The website is bleedingbluemovie.com, right? Now, we promised our listeners we're going to keep going here, but I'm just putting a little plug in the middle, a discount code for you. We don't have it at the moment. Kevin's team is going to get that to us. So come back to this Facebook page, or if you're watching this on a secondary, Larry's going to be putting it on the screen. So just check back on our Facebook page or to this movie, and we'll have that for you. bleedingbluemovie.com. All right. You had mentioned something earlier, and again, we can be political as long as it's your opinion, as long as our center isn't advocating for a partisan. Our guests can say what they like. And I'm going to get a little of that. You know, in the past few days, a presidential candidate, Joe Biden, is trying to blame Trump for the city riots and the unrest. But you say in the movie that this period of unrest started under the Obama-Biden administration. So is it ironic that he's saying that? Is he right? Is he wrong? What's your view on that? Of course he's wrong.
I mean, look, Joe Biden's doing everything to keep, you know, he's got one foot on the grave and the other on a banana peel politically, maybe even in real life. Joe looks like he's been rode hard and put up wet, as we say in the country. It started with Obama. Look, this whole issue started years ago, but it got put on steroids under Obama. We talk about it in the film with Professor Gates. So Obama's 1,000 miles away from the situation when a Cambridge police officer gets called. Gates is breaking into his own house, he and a buddy. They force open the window of the door, and neighbors see it, and they report it. And it's not
Massachusetts,
Yeah, Massachusetts. It's not reported, you know, through some kind of lens of color. It's just neighbors saying, my neighbor's house is being broken into. So cop shows up. He's been called in. He's not hunting Professor Gates. Gates has this cocky attitude, elitist Ivy League, Harvard. Sorry, there, Mike, but yeah, he's an elitist. And so he thinks that, you know, he shouldn't have to answer questions. And the cop's like, look, I need to make sure it's your residence, that you're not answering questions under duress, yada, 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 blows out of proportion. They arrest Gates. Barack Obama makes the statement, the cop acted stupidly. Now, what could Barack Obama have said that would have diffused everything, even to this day? He could have said, you know what? The neighborhood watch did their job. Our citizens did their job. The police did their job. And you know where the job failed? With the citizen. Professor Gates should have put his hands, he should have given the officer all the information.
He basically resisted arrest. And
he resisted. This officer's making sure he's okay. And Gates is like, no, you're not. You're making it racial and all this. And the officer's like, look, fine, you want to get arrested, I'll put the bracelets on you. You'll get some jewelry. And then Obama says he acted stupidly. And what Obama should have said is, no citizen, whether you know me or not, I don't care what your status is in the community, you will obey law enforcement. You will do as they ask. He was trying to figure out what the details were, but he didn't say that because Barack Obama is a racist himself. He brought racism he put into the White House. He ran on racism. He put it on steroids. John McCain didn't fight him on it. The Republicans didn't fight him on it. Nobody challenged him on race.
Courage, right? Yeah. So here's my larger point I want to get to. So didn't it really, I mean, certainly I think that incident led, and then the Trayvon Martin and everything else led to accelerants on this. But then, when we talked about how when you and I don't know what you experienced, I can't speak for you as a 20-something or 30-something, but when I played pro sports, I mean, there was none of this tension.
Right.
I mean, recognized histories and problems and all that but didn't this start way before Obama? I mean, didn't the Al Sharptons and Jesse Jacksons and them really start kindling this fire? And so that's one question. And then when did it change? When did that point come? If you assume for the minute in the 80s and 90s, things really weren't that bad. At some point, they started getting worse again. When did that happen? And this was way before Obama. And what was
we talked about it. I mean, it was everything leading up to the turbulent 60s, which was a well-deserved civil rights movement.
Yes.
And I'm all for it. I would have been marching hand in hand with John Lewis and Martin Luther King and all the other people. So it was legit. And by the time the 80s rolled around, we had this new, Reagan brought in a whole new revolution. Blacks were now mainstream. We had gone from I'm going to give you some pop culture, but we'd gone from blaxploitation films where we were always playing pimps and prostitutes and gangbangers and thugs to suddenly we started with Room 222, where we had an education show, blacks, very educated blacks. We had Julia, where Diane Carroll was a nurse. We had Barefoot in the Park with Scoey Mitchell and Tracy Reed. Who was a urban couple that again they weren't the norm, and it was. And then we migrated into the 80s, and we got the Cosby Show, and Cosby brought a husband and wife who were a doctor and a lawyer. It had well-adjusted kids that had all their issues, but they worked through them. And Cosby showed people how families sticking together. So we had this whole revolution. And while that was going on, Ronald Reagan did something very interesting. He said, let's focus on prosperity. So blacks became, we weren't menial jobs. We weren't maids and butlers and all the other stuff like Benson. Suddenly we were doctors and lawyers and entertainment, and all this. And we were experiencing the very same things that white culture was experiencing.
When did it change?
So what happened was, but at this point, Sharpton and those guys were diminishing in stature, and the race pimping industry was taking a hit. And then comes Barack Obama. And because it was effectively gone. How gone was it? Not that I heard you white people asking me that, but how gone was it, Mike? Okay, I'll answer your question.
Yeah, how gone was it?
It was so far gone that Barack Obama got elected as president. A very unqualified man who ran on nothing but being an empty suit and being able to articulate and talk like this here, tell people what they want to hear. And people said, "Oh, he's dreamy. He's everything we've been waiting for to put the seal of approval that America is no longer racist." And they elected the guy. And so that was supposed to be the end of it. And I told everybody that would listen, all you white folks that go to the cocktail parties and hold your pinkies out. I said, it ain't over, guys. You think it's over, but the left is not going to. Now they get to put it on steroids because the idea was now it's payback, white America. We're going to get you. And so Barack Obama immediately, it didn't take a minute. We had the guys at the polling booth that tried to disrupt people, the new Black Panthers, they exonerated them. We had the girl that said, I'm gonna get all my bills paid. And Barack Obama immediately it became black versus white, but then it went worse. And not black versus white, it was male versus female, it was rich versus poor, it was LGBT versus non-LGBT. He put every divider in the country on steroids while everybody was under the illusion that we were coming closer together.
And on top of that, you mentioned in your movie, and again, we'll leave some to the viewer's imagination, but just briefly, you mentioned how the media is fueling all this. You call it yellow journalism. What do you mean by that?
They don't want to be truthful. They're cowards. The narrative has been set, in this particular case of the film, Bleeding Blue, that cops go out and hunt black people. Now, if you stop for just a second, you step back and you go, boy, it's an epidemic, because we had 3 black folks shot or killed in the last couple of weeks. Well, that's a weekend. That's not even a weekend in Chicago. That's like a few hours in Chicago. But when it happens with a cop, it's an epidemic. Really? How's it an epidemic? Media, explain it to me. Because as I've given you the numbers, 7,000 blacks are killed every year, mostly by other blacks. 200 blacks in a bad year are killed by cops. Now, if you agree with me that not all the people that the cops shot were good guys, the 200, but let's say they were. Let's say everybody that the cops killed, those 200 roughly black people that are killed every year by cops, are all good guys. 7,000 black people are killed by other black people. Now, you can make them good guys or bad guys, but if I'm going to address a number, if you say to me, Kevin, somebody's stealing from you, and we think 200 is being stolen over here, and 7,000 is being stolen over here, I'm going to go address the 7,000 being stolen. But we are so idiotic in this culture that we go, no, let's address the $200 that's being stolen. And oh, by the way, it's not 200 that's being stolen. It's technically only $4, where it's a suspect shooting. Now let's look at the last couple of cases with a guy in Atlanta with George Floyd. More fentanyl in his system to kill a horse, but the cops killed him. Everybody, all the medical examiners said George Floyd was a walking time.
That's not going to be very popular from that point of view, Kevin.
Well, but it is. That's what it is. Ask me if I care about popularity. So there's that. The guy in Atlanta who cops spent 30, 45 minutes talking down. And what did he do? He stole their taser and tried to who knows what. But I know I'm not going to get killed if you try to steal my taser. So he gets himself killed. And now we're talking about a rapist who the family calls the cops and they show up and they do their job. He's paralyzed now. Those are the 3 cases that we currently have that have America burning down. Now, really, is that Rosa Parks? Give me any one of those guys and tell me that's the Rosa Parks that you want to hang your hat on as a civil rights movement in today. We now idolize thugs. Michael Brown Jr. was a thug. Look at the video. He's a thug. And Barack Obama's Justice Department proved that he tried to kill the cop. But there are people out there who still believe Darren Wilson is guilty, and they want to hunt him down and hurt him.
All right, let's go back to cops a little bit. And before I have you summarize some of the really tremendously touching stories you tell and statements I mean, they're really amazing. I want to cover one other area that troubles me.
You can admit you cried, Mike, if you want to. You can admit you cried.
It was tough, some of them. It was tough.
I cried in that movie. Yeah. I ain't gonna lie.
Now, the thing that frustrates me about conservatives, even our president on this, is while there isn't I don't believe, and you don't believe there's systematic racial brutality by police, there are some bad acts, occasional ones, right? There are. But what I don't hear from our side is that when there is a bad apple, we are going to serve justice. That has to happen, doesn't it? I mean, everybody.
Are you kidding? Come on, Mike.
I don't hear that from anybody.
We studied this. We did a report on this. We took all these cases over the past, because it started with Randy Moss's tie during the NFL Hall of Fame deal. And we took all the people off of this tie. And we looked at those cases. And in almost every one of the cases, in almost every case, the family got a huge settlement. But what was interesting is whether the cop was guilty or not, the family got a huge settlement. And in many cases, the cops are in prison. Their careers are ruined. Whenever the mistake was made, the justice was served. Usually double justice, because even if the cop was right, in the case of Michael Brown, for example, his family got millions of dollars. The cop was right. He was vindicated, and they still got millions of dollars. In the case of Freddie Gray, the cops were all vindicated, but Freddie Gray's family got almost $7 million. And then there's case after case like that.
I'm not saying justice isn't being served. I'm just saying that our side doesn't seem to talk about that. There's a balance. When there's a bad shooting or a bad incident, we'll serve justice, but let's not overplay it. All we seem to say is, "Oh, you're wrong. The stats don't support."
No, that's not true. In the George Floyd,
that's what I hear.
Well, no, in the George
It's
Floyd
the politicians I'm talking about, not just.
Well, maybe the politicians, but the average person, when we got the information about George Floyd, we had the cop with his knee on his neck. There was hardly a person out there on the right who didn't go, "That looks bad. That looks bad." Now, you still need to know, and of course, now we got all the evidence, and we find out, as would have been my prediction. They asked George, "Come on, George, get out of the car. Get out of the car. Get out of the car." He wouldn't get out. They had to drag him out of the car. They get him on the ground. He's 6'8", damn near 300 pounds. And they're going, "Well, why did you have to use so much force? Have you ever tried to subdue I mean, I'm a fighter. I can tell you this. If you're small, we're going to go hand to hand. If you're big, I'm taking you down hard, fast. There will be the hyenas won't even know where your body was when I'm done with you, because I'm going to absolutely destroy you, because I have to. I have to believe that you have too many attributes that are more, that are better than I have. You're bigger and stronger. So I've got to use all my skill, and I'm going to. Now, if you're smaller, I'm not taking you for granted, but I'm going to give you a little bit more leeway. So all I'm getting at is, we've looked at all these cases. I'm talking about, I bet you we studied 200 cases. And when it's wrong, on the conservative side, we go, it's wrong, put them in jail, put them in prison.
I need to hear more politicians saying that. I agree with that fully, absolutely. All right, listen, I want to get to a big question in a minute. I just want to say a few other things. So your movie takes us through the Michael Brown incident in detail. It takes us through, it mentions, I think you mentioned Colin Kaepernick in there.
Oh yeah, we mentioned Kaepernick.
We mentioned that situation.
Yeah, we covered the kneelers.
But what your movie is really about, we really haven't, and again, this is before I get to the big question, but what we really haven't covered it enough is what your movie is really about. And it's about the emotions of these police officers and their families, their humanity.
Yeah, man.
Without getting into anyone's personal story, how would you just summarize? That's where the crying comes in. That's where, I mean, it's an amazing tell people, set of stories.
Look, we forget that these are human beings, and because they strap on a uniform and they have a code that they go by, that's a good thing. They volunteer to put their own personal rights aside in order to live up to a code. It's like a military person to me. You put your rights aside and say, "I'm going to live up to a code," and there's a special mentality for that. And I will tell you, there are scenes in this movie where these police encounter some of the worst inhumanity to man. People that abandon their kids and stuff that just you won't even believe that happens. And you say to yourself, they face this day in and day out. And not enough has been said about the level of psychology,
the stress they're under. Yeah.
Oh, it's unbelievable. Now, some things that didn't make it that will come in the next version of this film.
Oh, wow, there's a next version. Great.
Yeah, we're doing a director's cut.
Oh, great.
And it's got mafia cop, a guy that says, "Hey, I was a cop who worked for the mob. I was your worst enemy." So we have mafia cop. We have suicide by cop, which nobody talks about. A lot of these shootings that happen are suicide by cop.
Yeah.
So we talk about that. We talk about there were scenes that we had to cut out of the movie. We could have made a 3-hour movie, but it's an hour and a half. And, you got to cut stuff out because people aren't going to watch it. But they are riveting. And we talk about the entertainment section of this film alone.
Yeah, the scene, and it couldn't have been produced in Hollywood any better. Apparently it was police cam. Scene that just, I can't get out of my head, was apparently a young white officer had just shot somebody.
Oh, yeah.
We don't know who, and he literally, or why, and he literally breaks down on the hood of the car, and the police cam in the car captures the whole thing. Is apparently his fellow police officer is consoling him, but the guy was
a bad shoot.
Completely broken down.
Completely, and that's the whole point of it. They make it, they're bloodthirsty cops going out there.
Right.
This guy, and by the way, he's not alone. In the next series, the next movie we do, Bleeding Blue: The Aftermath, we're going to talk to some of these guys that accidentally kill somebody. They are emotional wrecks. Their lives, in many cases, stop. They never forget the person that they shot. I mean, I could go on. So we want people to understand These are human beings with human emotions, and they're doing a job that 99.99% of this country wouldn't do if you put a gun to their head. So understand that.
All right, here's the big question. In fact, I'm going to come up with a baseball name for this. What would be the equivalent of the big question? Here's the bases loaded 3-2 pitch, all right? There it is. I haven't thought about this before. Here's the bases loaded 3-2 pitch.
I'm loaded up. Ready for my walk-off.
You look ready, baby. You look ready up there. It was my bat. I got a batter on there anyway. Ultimately, all of this, right, whether we're talking about police are there to protect the community, right?
Right.
Civil rights exist so that we can live peacefully and equally in our communities. Our center for, in our country, freedom and prosperity. We want to be free so that we can prosper. All police and civil rights are all meant to enhance freedom and prosperity and your safety. So my question is this. Here's the 3-2 pitch with the bases loaded. You think about BLM, you think about the defunding movement, you think about these riots and this upheaval. How does it leave those communities? Are these things good for Black, minority, or any other community in America? Are they doing good? Are they achieving any end for those communities?
Yeah, so you look at what's happened just recently in the last 3 months. Spikes in every major metropolitan area in violent crime. And I'm not talking 10% incremental or 5%, 7%, 10, 20%. Talking 30% to, I think the crime spiked in New York, murders spiked 239%. So you're not talking incremental. And the worst part is that it disproportionately hurts the communities of color, because cops are like, okay, you already don't like me. Snitches get stitches. You want to defund the police. All of your civil rights activists, these rabble rousers, are anti-cop. You're anti-cop. So I'll answer that call slower. Or you know what? I won't answer it at all. If you want Colin Kaepernick or some social worker to come be your police officer, go be it. And so the overwhelming majority of Blacks and probably Latinos and other communities want the police in their communities. As I said earlier, 700% more Blacks call the cops than whites. So we want them there. We understand the need for them. But we are, sadly, the squeaky wheel, the AOCs of the world, the Ilhan Omars and so on, are the ones getting Al Sharptons and even when you marginalize some, you create Sharpton and Jackson are pretty marginalized.
So you don't see this as this is going to lead to anything positive for those communities.
There's absolutely nothing positive that can come out of the anarchy that's being fomented right now. Nothing positive can come out of it. If the change is going to be made, it's going to be people like us that say enough is enough. And already, I heard the new police, not Portland, I think it was Seattle, Black police chief. She already said, you've hamstrung me. You've tied my hands by defunding my police. You've set me up for failure. And she's exactly right. She will fail.
All right, last question, because I did promise that we'd address this in our promo. Just your thoughts on Black Lives Matter.
It's a racist group. You don't have to put any color in front of lives matter. All lives matter. So you don't have to say all. Lives matter. And they're a terrorist group that wants to destroy the patriarchal system in America, particularly the two-parent home. And they make no bones about it. It's in their mission statement right on their website. It's done absolutely nothing for the Black community, never has and never will. And it's a menace to the American society. And it should be labeled a terror group.
And why are corporations supporting it? Why are leagues honoring it and glorifying it?
Because it's the new woke thing to do. And nobody, my group, we're the only ones pushing back right now that I know of, but I'm talking pushing back hard, punch to the throat, is explaining Black Lives Matter for what they are. But eventually what happens is when the pendulum swings the other way, and we've got to make these corporations do it by voting with our pocketbooks and by talking to their board of directors and various advisory boards and tell them, look, if you're going to support terror, we're not gonna use your product. We're already doing it with NBA. The NBA is falling off an average of 20%. Their games are not being watched. The NFL is going to suffer the same fate. It's already been dropping since Kaepernick started the mess. Major League Baseball took on the mantle. Guess what? Numbers dropping. So keep it up. And the more that the public pushes back and says enough is enough, we're not going to take it, we're not going to tolerate racist terrorist groups in our midst, then it'll stop.
The movie is called Bleeding Blue. The website is bleedingbluemovie.com. We will have for you shortly on our Facebook page and on this, on the replay of this, the discount code for you. You can purchase the movie there. Kevin Jackson, you are now an official teammate of mine on In the Dugout. I thank you.
In the dugout, man.
A great sport. We're in the dugout, baby. There's no better place to be in the world than in the dugout and just shooting breeze shooting the ball with your teammates. It's like we did today. So
well,
thank you.
Here's your cut for this show. I carry the water for Mike Stenhouse.
Oh, no, no. No, I cannot allow that. We cannot. We're teammates, baby. We're teammates.
All right, man.
All right. There's no water boy in this.
Put me in the game, Coach. Put me in the game.
All right, you got it. Kevin, thank you for being my guest. Good luck with your movie. I can't wait to see Director's Cut. Will you join us again when that comes out?
Yeah, sure.
All right. Kevin Jackson, good luck with Bleeding Blue.
Thank you.
We're in the dugout. Mike Stenhouse. We'll see you next game.